Welcome back, everybody, to my continued trek through Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation, the novel series. I am on Volume 3, Chapter 5. Again, this is Volume 2, but I don't have 3, so unfortunately I've been reading it digitally, but hopefully by the end of this analysis, I will get it in my hands. But yes, where we left off last time, we were on Chapter 5 of Volume 3, where we just had Rudius, Rijerd, and Eris leaving the Midgard village. And oddly enough, even though in the anime it immediately jumps to montage of them all fighting wolves and stuff, there's a little bit more detailed in the novel series. As they leave the Midgard village, it seems like there's an emphasis here that Rudius really wants to be able to survive on their own. He's sort of preparing himself and Eris for the day that, Rijerd's not always going to be there. Like, they have to figure out how to survive on their own if, they get separated or something. So despite the fact that Rijerd keeps wanting to just jump forward, take out the monsters, come back, prepare the camp for him and everything, he's kind of telling Rijerd at this point, hey, can you, instead of just doing it for us, can you show us how you're doing this stuff? How do you create a campfire? Well, we need to make there's no wood out here, so obviously we need to burn monster corpses. So let's go get some monster corpses. And he's like, okay, well, show us what you want to kill to burn. Okay, well, there's this treant over here. Take out that treant. And so what he's kind of doing is telling Rijerd, you can stay here and, back us up, but let's let Eris go forward. I'll be her backup, and then you can be on standby. So just jump in there if things get dangerous. So I thought it was really interesting because this is kind of putting a little more emphasis on the idea that, again, Rudius really wants to learn how to survive on his own. Again, wants to instill that knowledge upon Eris as well. They have a long journey ahead of themselves, so it's only natural that they want to kind of learn a little bit more about surviving. And yes, technically, Eris is fully happy about the idea of being able to go out on her adventure and fight monsters all on her own. It was funny at this point because we started to get into knowledge about what treants are. He classifies them as several different ones. We have the lesser treants, which is basically where a sapling absorbs too much magical energy. The next classification is lesser treants that have absorbed enough nutrients from a fairy fountain in the Great Forest. These ones can actually mature into elder treants. Because of the highly concentrated magic from these fountains, it gives them the ability to use water magic. The next one is the old treants, which is essentially when a massive old tree has mutated. And then we have zombie treants, which was the funniest one I've run into. A zombie treant is essentially where a tree is withering away, and then it absorbs its magical energy and mutates. And all these kind of have this similar characteristic about them, is that they all mimic actual trees until something comes close enough that they can reach, and that's when they attack. Now, the oddity that's in the stone treant is that they mimic a rock. And how they do this is because, essentially, when they mutated, they were a seed. And so they're able to kind of change their size to where they can become what looks like a rock. But they still have the ability to kind of manifest into actual trees the moment that something comes close enough to them. So they don't remain being the shape of a seed. And Rudius is trying to figure out what is the best method that he can use to support Eris, because it seems as if he himself is acknowledging that he's always been so focused on magic in a way that he just is going to be alone. I'm going to be able to attack something. I'm going to be able to stop something. Again, technically a lot of his training in combat was either sparring against Eris or sparring against Paul. So he doesn't really have much knowledge in having a party that he has to support other people. And so this comes into play when he actually is trying to use something on this treant that won't kill it and allow Eris to come in and attack it as well. And so he creates this earth magic bullet that he projects so fast it literally decimates this treant, despite the fact that he wanted to just kind of harm it. And he realizes very quickly, based on Rijerd kind of mentioning it as well, is if that hits somebody, it would probably kill them. And so there was a little bit of a fear there that if this nicked Eris or something like that, that could really harm her. So he's got to figure out how he can kind of lower his magic capability. And yes, technically ask Rijerd, hey, what's the best way that I can support somebody? How can I support somebody as a mage? And he's like, why are you asking me? Like, this dude's been alone for hundreds of years. I doubt that he knows how to play as a party. But this does have Rijerd kind of curious as to the staff that Rudius is carrying. And technically the fact that he's using incantationless spells. They didn't go on to fight more stone treants. They fight some great tortoises, some acid wolves, and some pax coyotes. He mentioned the fact that pax coyotes their specialty is that they can duplicate themselves. Now, he says that it's not an issue when they're in combat with them because it takes a few months before they can actually produce another one. And with this particular pack, they fought 20 of them. He knows the fact that Eris is a natural. She kind of rushes in there and takes down this stuff, despite having a little bit, like, she's exhausted, but she's kind of hiding it. It does seem like she's a natural for this stuff. It doesn't surprise him too much because, obviously, this is a girl that was trained by Ghislaine. Even Reserve himself is also acknowledging Eris' skill at this point, saying that if she applies herself well enough that she can become a master swordsman someday. Which, yes, technically, really pleases Eris. And this is where we get a big reveal of something that's kind of been building up for over some time. So we went to the Migard village, all this stuff regarding the great tortoises and everything. What we get revealed in this next scene is that, unfortunately, despite the fact that everybody was claiming this, tortoise meat is not good. It does seem like Eris likes it, but he kind of assumes that Eris likes it because she just thinks about all these memories of Ghislaine's stories about being an adventurer and eating campfires and stuff, and she's kind of just stuck in the moment. Like, she's absorbed in the fact that she's able to do this. Now, this is where things get, jokes aside, this is where things actually do get really, really interesting for me. I kind of mentioned this a little bit in my last video, but one thing that was always kind of hit on several times with Reserve, and technically the Superds, is that their spear is like their soul. Like, this is something that they should never let go. And that was emphasized on the idea that when they got the devil spears, nobody wanted to put down their spears. The putting down your spear is death. This is something that you don't put down until you pass. This is something that is, again, of their soul. Now, the big question mark that came up is, what decided this? Like, who's making these spears, and why does when you get assigned one, is it like, I take upon this myself and make an oath that I will never let it go? No, they are literally born with these things, which, again, unless I'm completely blind, I don't remember any mention of this whatsoever in the anime. Yes, when a Superd is born, they are born with a 3-pointed tail. At a certain age, this tail will then stiffen up and it will fall off, but it's still a part of them, because that's the point in which they take it upon themselves and it is their spear for their life. Now, the interesting thing that comes from this is that it's something that seems to evolve over time, because even though it's fell off of them, it seems like it grows with them. As every fight, everything they do, it will become more deadly and grow stronger. With enough time and effort, this thing will be a powerful weapon, virtually unbreakable and capable of piercing through pretty much anything. So again, it gives it a little more perspective in the novel that this is something that they don't let go. This is something that technically grows with them. I would understand if it was a thing where, yes, they were born with this tail, the tail stiffens and falls off, and they pick it up and it's their sword, their spear. But to give it a little bit more emphasis on the idea that it grows with them, that it gets more powerful as they use it, lets me know that it continues to be an entity of them. Despite the fact that it fell off of them, they're still bonded. They're still connected. Now, the thing that I obviously ask at this point, and maybe this will be something they'll get into eventually, I'm assuming, is what does it involve him wielding the spear of his son? Does it still grow? Does it still get stronger? My original assumption was that it wasn't so much, because of what they said here was that it's virtually unbreakable and capable of piercing through pretty much anything. This is giving me a theory, and I don't know if this is going to be true or not. This is giving me a theory that I don't believe that Reserve is carrying the spear of his son. My theory is that Reserve is carrying his spear. It was just that his son picked up his spear. So this is how it plays out. So you have Reserve, he goes out there, the devil spears are presented to them. So he puts his spear down and he says, everybody, take upon yourself these devil spears. This is our great master. He is presenting us with this gift. We must accept it. And then I think that his son at that point came and took his spear. Like, he didn't want to leave it there. His son took his spear for him. Of course, he could have technically left it at the village. But because it says it's an unbreakable and capable of piercing through anything, my thought process goes back to that point in which Reserve came to the village with the other Superds and massacred everybody. I don't think, because it mentions specifically that his son was training, he was a warrior, but he was no match for Reserve. The only thing he was able to do was focus on taking, well, it doesn't say that he focused on it, but the only thing he was capable of doing was taking out the devil spear. And I don't know that he himself would have had a tail strong enough or a spear strong enough to break the devil spear. So I think what he did is he probably went and got Reserve's spear, which would have been more honed, would have been more powerful, and used that to break the devil spear. I don't know why Reserve would think that that's his son's spear unless they all look the same and he would have easily made that mistake, or if he just calls it his son's spear because he wants to remember his son forever and ever. But that's where my theory is going. I think the fact that they specifically said pierce through pretty much anything leads me to believe that something capable of destroying the devil spears, which were these things that were really powerful, would have been his own. But we'll see. We'll see. This is my speculation. Again, I don't need confirmation in the comments. This is all speculation. Let's have fun with speculation. Let's not ruin it for everybody. But yeah, still really cool getting that knowledge. Now all I can think of is mental image of Rajerd, and he's got this little, he's got like this little devil tail, and something goes bing and just drops off, and he just picks it up and goes, all right, cool, got my spear. I'd be curious to know, like, if there's like an age point, because obviously he's like 566 or something like that. I'd be curious to know, like, how old until they get their spear. I would assume like pretty young, that way they can hone it, but it'd be curious to see that. Maybe one of these days we'll get like a full-on backstory of Rajerd, maybe his life when he was younger or whatever. That'd be really cool. Anyways, with that side, we go on to chapter 6, where we have Rajerd, Rudius, and Eris arriving at the city of Rikarisu. Rikarisu or Rikarisu, I'm not sure exactly which one is. It would be Rikarisu. Rikarisu is apparently one of the 3 largest settlements on the Demon Continent. And the special thing about this place is that during the Great Human-Demon War, this place served as the home base for the forces of the Demon Empress. At its center is essentially the castle of Kishirika. And it all kind of sits within this large crater that kind of protects its outer side. So it's kind of a nice place to have a base. Now, here's the funny thing, because I remember specifically in the anime, when they arrive at the gates, immediately they start hearing people talking about that there was a sighting of Dead End, and we need to figure out a way to block this. Now, at this point, Rudius doesn't know what Dead End is. He doesn't know what they're referring to. So obviously, but he still wants to hide the fact that this is a Superd. So in the anime, he quickly goes over and finds this random clay or something off the side that he's able to use to change the color of Rajerd's hair to blue. And then technically disguise him as a Midgard. Give him the necklace from Roxy. That way everybody believes that he is a Midgard. Now, I would have loved to see this animated. I really would have loved to see this animated. In the novel, what he does instead was that he fabricates a helmet and he puts it on Rajerd's head. And then when they get to the gates, they're like, who the heck are you guys? Like, here's 2 kids and some random guy with a helmet on. So he describes himself as just, you know, a bunch of kids that are kind of disciples of this guy that, unfortunately, what they say is that Rajerd was trying on an adventurer's helmet and it got stuck. So they need to go find a shop so they can find somebody that will remove this from his head. So thus disguising Rajerd at the same time, they're able to get inside and have an excuse to get inside because they got to find a shop to get rid of this. And then he goes on to ask about, you know, how do you make money here? And they're like, well, why do you need to know that? Well, we need money to pay because this lady's going to want money to take this helmet off his head. I just had this really goofy image of, yeah, technically Rudius and Eris, these 2 kids that are with this tall guy with his helmet stuck on his head. It would have been way more funnier than the show had. Upon arriving in town, that's when they actually buy some dyes to dye his hair. So he does have the plan either way to eventually disguise him as a Midgard, because that's all going to play into his plan that he has coming up, which is to create the group for the Adventure Guild's Dead End. He also buys a cloak to disguise himself, which just ends up turning into being the one that he gives to Eris eventually, which is the one that has the cat ears. So it's not that they arrived in there and Eris found this cute cloak and says, oh, I want this. And he's like, okay, we'll buy it. Thank you, Rudius. No, he bought it and then later on said, oh, go ahead and wear this, because he wanted to disguise Eris, because Eris has this flamey red hair and he wants Focus to go in on Rajerd as this fake Superd. So the whole idea behind the cloak was he wanted to cloak and cover up Eris so that she doesn't distract anybody. But yeah, this is when Rudius lays out his plan. He says in order to help the perspective that people have of Superds, what they're going to do is they're going to essentially have Rajerd play the role as a Midgard that is trying to act like he's a Superd. He's going to act like he is Dead End. And so again, they dye his hair blue, they give him the necklace from Roxy, and then they go into this place and claim that he is the Superd. He is Dead End. And of course, everybody's going to find this a mockery. And what the idea behind Rudius's plan is that he wants everybody to think that this is a joke. He wants everybody to think that this is a lie. That there's some random Midgard that wants to be this big tough guy, but he's not really a tough guy. And so he's going to be a mockery. But the idea is that if you fake that you are this person for so long, eventually this tale of this Midgard that's playing the role as a Superd will eventually dilute as it reaches everybody's ear. I forget what the concept is, but it's essentially the concept that when you whisper something in one person's ear, they whisper it in another person's ears. Eventually, by the end of 100 people, the context is lost. So over here you say there's a Midgard that's pretending to be Superd, and he does good things. by the end of it, all you hear is that there's a Superd doing good things. And so that's the concept that Rudeus wants to go with. And again, it technically works out really great. They go in there, everybody's laughing about the fact that they're claiming to be the Superd. Superds have green hair. What are you talking about? And yes, we eventually get the introduction of Nokopara, which, know that guy. Nokopara, this big horse guy that shows up, makes fun of him. And yes, that frog guy. That was a little different in the novel. That was significantly different. After they sign in, he gets his whole information that he needs to be their own adventurers, their own adventure group. And eventually they go over to go to the board. And in the anime, this frog tries to trip Rajerd. And Rajerd looks down at him, intimidates him, just staring at him, and the frog pulls his foot back, and Rajerd goes by. In the novel, Rudeus goes by him. He lifts his foot to trip Edis. Edis stumbles but catches her foot, doesn't react. Instead, she just humps and walks away, goes to Rudeus' side. Then Rajerd walks up, he lifts his foot again, and Rajerd kicks his foot, flips him, the frog lands on his stomach on the ground, everybody's laughing. The frog stands up, pulls a knife on Rajerd, and that's when Nokopara makes his first entrance. He walks forward and says, "Hey, stop. We don't need any of that stuff. Stop picking on the newbies. It was all you just lost your footing, right?" The frog's like, "No, dude, this is not happening." And the Nokopara says, "You lost your footing, right?" And that's when the frog gives up. So quite a different introduction there, but it still has the whole situation with Nokopara really trying to mess with Rudeus and his team, really joking about the fact that, yeah, there's this guy here that's a Magurd that's claiming to be a Superd. Now, technically, for me and many other people at this point that have watched the anime or maybe read on, yes, I'm already kind of getting hints at this point that I'm wondering how much Nokopara knows, because we do know that Nokopara does know Roxy. He may even know what that particular necklace was. I don't know if they're all pretty much generic Magurd necklaces, or if they're specially crafted for each of the Magurds. Hers might be special to her. I would imagine that it's not, because otherwise the people of Magurd seeing Rudeus's necklace would know immediately that's Roxy's. They said, "You know one," and he says, "Yes, Roxy was my master." And they, "Oh, okay, that's it." So maybe he doesn't know specifically that it is Roxy's, but he does know what a Magurd is. Regarding the pin, I got to kick out the fact that when Rudeus first gave the necklace to Rajerd to wear, and Rajerd's like, "Isn't this special to you?" And Rudeus says, "Yes, it is very special to me. It was given to me by my master, so don't lose it. If you lose it, I will kill you," basically. He says specifically that he will cover all the exits with earth magic, and then he'll fill the entire crater with magma. Rajerd says, "But then you'll kill all the children." And he's like, "Yeah, so if you don't want the children dead, don't lose it." It's like, yeah, fine point. I thought that was really great. Another really funny point they made in going into Chapter 7 with the introduction into the Adventure Guilds, I really do like the fact that when he first enters there, he says, "After 44 years of abstaining from employment, I have finally entered an employment office," technically. But yeah, that was a lot of information in here. I'm not going to go through all of it, but they basically do lay out a lot of the rules that are expected from a member of the Adventure Guild. A lot of things about if you fail a contract itself, you have to pay back like 1/5 of the actual reward. Expectations, not doing things to defame the guild itself. They do get into the idea that, yes, they technically want to use aliases, and they allow it. And he questions that, like, well, then criminals can sign up, right? And they're like, yeah, plenty of criminals do. We don't mind. As long as you don't do anything that causes problems for the Adventure Guilds, they'll hire anybody. And they don't really care what your name is. But it was interesting, though, because he does fill out the major information, what your name is, what your profession is, and what your rank is. Everything else, the card does. The card picks up your race, it picks up your age, which that's when we find out that Rajerd is 566. It picks up that he's a demon, but not that he's specifically a Superd. And additionally, the things themselves are powered by like a source of mana that's inside of it that has to be recharged over time. But it is cool that it does pick the language on the card based on your race, like a generic choice. But you can change what the tongue is. So if you are like half demon and it assigns it as human, you could speak that you want it to be in demon, and it'll actually change all the writing to your specific language. Very, very fancy little card. And this does play into later on when they do get into doing jobs. The jobs themselves have key tokens that basically say that you complete your job. So when they go in there and they order a job, they'll be given this card. And then when the job is completed, they actually put their finger on it and say that it's complete, and it changes, and they can give that to the adventurer that completed the job. So there's actually a whole system to this whole thing. Again, there's rules, regulations, how you advance and how you D-rank. If you don't do enough jobs, you'll D-rank. But if you do enough jobs, you'll rank up. You can only do one rank above you. All that kind of stuff is kind of laid out in Chapter 7. With that said, I'm going to leave it there with Chapter 7 being completed. So that's Chapters 5 through 7. Again, I thought this was going to be a lot quicker than it ended up being. Maybe we'll have multiple parts of this entire volume, but I hope you guys enjoyed it as usual. If you did, make sure to hit that like button down below. Comment, let me know what you thought of this whole segment, these chapters. If you're enjoying the series, love to get your guys' feedback. I definitely appreciate everybody's support with this whole thing, sharing this out to your friends, getting the word out. It's been great getting all the feedback as I travel through the novel series. Additionally, if you've not already, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you get all my content. I do news, reviews, first impressions, and yes, technically I'm reading through the entirety of Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation, so you can get all of my videos as I release them. Additionally, if you want to support the channel more, I would greatly appreciate if you consider supporting us through Patreon, our tips link, or super thanks button down below. I definitely appreciate everybody that does, and y'all take care.